Ladies and gentlemen, when there's one hack to hack your camera into a night vision camera, then this is the video for you. My name is Paul, I'm a German videographer. I consider myself not as a YouTuber because I make actual money with my LUMIX S5 camera and now with my LUMIX S1h camera, and this is a night test video with the LUMIX S1h and the 16 to 35mm f4 lens. I've chosen this lens because some of you may only have an f4 lens, and when you don't consider darkness as your ally because you have an f4 lens, then this may be the video for you. Okay, what are major good settings for low light videography? 25 or 24 pictures per second are the least amount of frames you can choose to have an ultra good cinematic image, in my opinion. And 30 pictures per second or 50 pictures per second are more pictures per second. That also is less light per second. That has to do with the shutter speed. Shutter speed is, in terms of videography, the 180-degree shutter speed rule. If you don't know this rule, I made a whole video about it, watch it. And that's basically when you film in 50 frames per second, your shutter has to be 1/100 in order to keep a nice motion blur. I film in 25 pictures per second to have 1/50 my shutter speed, or 180 degrees, and a 50th of the second is a longer time than 100th of the seconds, and that results in actually double the performance of light. So you can perform a good trick with your camera and have actually double the strength in your low light when you film in 25 or 24 pictures per second. This is the first trick. Then understanding the sensor is crucial. Some camera sensors are made for low light, some camera sensors are made for overexposing, and some camera sensors are in the middle, I think. Sony sensors are very good for underexposed images. You can brighten up these images till they look amazing. LUMIX cameras, on the other hand, like overexposed pictures and then bringing the exposure down in post. When you have a camera like me, like the LUMIX S1h or the LUMIX S5, you can clearly see that you can overexpose your image and then bring it back in post. So learn to know your sensor, Google your sensor, ask Canon or ask Sony, whatever, or Nikon, whatever you shoot, and ask them, well, how does my sensor work? Or go on some Reddit forums and read about your sensor and understand your sensor. That helped me a lot in my career. When I have understood my sensor, that helped me actually a lot. It's quite handy to know what kind of sensor you're shooting. So the next part is clearly ISO. I am currently on ISO 6400. This camera is a dual ISO modus. I can say that you can easily shoot up to 20,000 ISO, because after any YouTube compression, after any noise reduction, will this look really okay, in my opinion. So don't be afraid of high ISOs. Better make the picture brighter and then make it a little bit darker in post. When we talk about low light, there's also the term of ISO. ISO is mostly your enemy. I know people tend to shoot to the lowest ISO as possible. I have my ISO settings mostly on I don't care. That means automatic. Most of the time I have my ISO on I don't care. I have made shoots for clients, big clients like Bayer, Westalpine. Actually, I don't want to flex on this, but I worked for million and billion dollar companies and I delivered them pictures which had 20,000 ISO, etc. One major trick is maybe stand directly under a light. When you film in low light and want to see yourself, then position yourself next to a huge light so that you can see, okay, I am in the light. I want to expose myself very well. The background can be a little bit underexposed. That's okay, because the video is about you. Maybe when you do a little video about the city or taking nice B-roll, then comes one major trick for you now. My settings are now ISO automatic 6400, f4, 180 degrees shutter rule and 25 pictures per second. And I want to show you now how you can break the shutter angle rule by applying a different shutter speed to your camera. I have now actually a 1:1 ratio. I film now with a 360 degrees shutter angle, which is 1/25, basically a fourth of a second. shutter speed in my video. As you may see, the motion blur looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit different. Let me turn it back now to 180 degrees. That's the motion blur now. That's a different motion blur, also okay. And on 360 is the motion blur like this. The picture became suddenly very, very brighter, and it is only a problem to change the shutter speed angle when you have a moving image, like me walking through a frame. Maybe this is a little problem in a 360 degree shutter speed rule, and 180 degrees looks like this. It's cold in Berlin, Germany. But the thing is, when you have a static image and you want to show your audience that you can shoot also on low ISOs, then is 360 degrees shutter angle completely okay. It transforms your image. You can use then less lower ISO, and that looks amazing. Let me bring my ISO down a little bit, basically on auto now. And now I change my ISO to maybe 3200, which is for most people the sweet spot. And it looks still very good in my opinion. Besides, when I talk and move a lot, you can maybe see a little bit of this blur when I move. But when I stand completely still, that shouldn't be such a problem. Another 360 degrees shot with ISO 3200. The only problem could occur when you move the camera. When you see here, I'm now on 16 millimeters. That's maybe a little bit okay, but when you zoom in, maybe on 35 millimeters, and when you focus maybe on this box, and when I move my camera, you have this motion blur, which makes some people actually really sick. And when you see the lights in the background, this motion blur is very noticeable. Let's get back to 180 degrees. Then we haven't so much motion blur. I try to move the camera the exact same way, and the motion blur is very less noticeable. I go now to ISO 6400, which is basically the double, and the exposure should be the same as before, but not so much motion blur anymore. For me, as someone who worked mainly with clients, like I said, never a problem with the picture are too noisy, or you used ultra high ISO. Sure, I try to keep my ISO mostly as low as possible, but in the real world, when you work with your camera, you have often the situation that you are on an event and you are indoors, and the lighting situation, like in a restaurant, it's moody, it's dark, it's not the best. Then you have to use your ISO 20000, and you have to use these high ISO numbers, because why are they even in a camera? They are in a camera because most of the time they are usable. So don't be afraid of high ISOs and use this to your advantage. I had one occasion where I was taking pictures for the Austrian commercial department. Was actually the country, Austria, booked me for some commercials here in Berlin, and I had to shoot people in a very dark and moody restaurant. And I couldn't use a flash because that would disturb the whole mood of the evening. The people there paid a lot of money to eat in a restaurant with fancy cooks and fancy chefs and etc. And my job was to portray this with a huge flash. Would it be a little bit disturbing? And I had my 70-200 with me, so I took a lot of pictures with it with 10,000 ISO and more, which was really okay. And I even filmed videos with 6400 ISO, 10,000 ISO sometimes. And I applied the in-camera noise reduction. The in-camera noise reduction in the LUMIX S1h works amazing in my opinion. That saves a little bit computing power when you then try to render the video and you apply noise reduction. Noise reduction is pretty demanding on your GPU, so I do this mostly in camera. And how's my business going? Actually very well. I am overwhelmed how well my business is going now these days. The month November was the best month I have ever experienced in my life. My company has become 4 years actually on this August, and August was a very good month, and I don't like to talk about my income a lot because people can get jealous. And in Berlin, in Germany, we say, ich will nicht, dass sie ein Auge auf dich legen, aber das in... Was? Nee. Filmemacher. Ja, aber ich sag nicht von mir, dass ich ein Vlogger bin eigentlich. Ich mache nur so für mich ein Video.
Ach so, machst du gerade hier Behind the Scenes oder was?
Ja, ist schon ein YouTube-Video, aber ich habe jetzt nicht so viel Follower oder sowas.
Trotzdem, viel Glück, viel Erfolg.
Dankeschön. And that was actually a guy asking me if I am a vlogger or something. Let's try now, pumping these ISO numbers really up here. We are now on ISO 20,000. As you then maybe know, the motion blur becomes pretty obvious when I move my head. What I wanted to say, I don't like to talk about my income because that's mainly a part where people can get jealous. I don't know, but I can tell you that I have several months where I make 5 figures a month, and not always is there a 1 on these 5 figures. My best month was actually November, where I made more than 20,000 euros, which was actually insane for me. After tax is it then not so high anymore, as you may know, because you have to pay a lot of taxes when you have a lot of income in Berlin, Germany. Little tax schooling here: when you have a revenue of maybe 100,000 euro per year, and you have then to pay taxes like 45%. So Germany takes 45,000 euros from your 100,000 euros of income. So when someone says he makes as a company 100,000 per year, after taxes is it then barely the half. So you can imagine that making a lot of money requires also to pay a lot of taxes. But overall, am I so happy with my company. I not working every day like a monster. I'm not I'm not one of these guys who tells you have to work maybe 24/7 constantly to achieve some goal. You can have free time like me now, and it's also okay to work maybe not 7 days per week, only maybe sometimes 2 days per week. That's also okay.